Rising, dominantly above barren plains and rainforests, through a veil of clouds, are the ragged, snow-capped peaks of Kilimanjaro. In this legendary place, the human spirit seeks to conquer the odds and embark on a journey to remember. Tanzania is one of the poorest countries in the world, yet it boasts a wealth of diversity. It houses the images we associate with the fabled Africa, like the Serengeti and the continent's highest mountain, Kilimanjaro. Here, life moves at a gentle pace, among ethereal beauty that sometimes masks the basic need for survival. August is one of the coolest months of the year in Marangu, an alpine village buried in the lush vegetation of the foothills.
One of the more profound aspects of choosing a place like Kilimanjaro or Africa is that the climber is right out of their comfort zone. You know, we travel to a third world country where the culture is different. We don't even speak the language. There's no flushing toilets, no running water, often no warm water. I think as we wandered through some of the villages, getting oriented to Marangu and the small African villages around Kilimanjaro, it was very apparent, you know, from the school children in their schools, and they don't have windows and they have dirt floors, to rough grass fields that they play soccer with yarn-wrapped balls.
It's to this part of the world that 10 climbers and 2 guides from Canada will take their goodwill mission to battle a disease that has already stripped so many of so much and now threatens to claim more victims than ever before. Their ultimate quest is to confront an adversary much greater than the mountain. They are preparing to fight Alzheimer's disease.
We came from such diverse backgrounds with such different interests and different age groups, just to come together and to be so positive. It's certainly been a long journey to get to this mountain, and it started really months ago when we'd chosen our team, and how the team then had to start working to get their donations and their sponsorship together.
The trip has to be a personal sacrifice for each climber. To begin with, they are expected to pay their own expenses. And before the team can go to Africa, each climber must raise at least $5,000 in donations, an assignment they take very seriously. With help from the internet, team member Tamara Poirier gathers over $12,000 in pledges.
Tamara, this is Nancy Campbell. Tamara's on the climb and also with Global.
It's not busy these
He's yelling and screaming.
Meanwhile, the meetings begin in April. Sandy Riley is one of the climbers going up in August, and she is a member of the Alzheimer Society that is promoting this climb for the 2nd year. Inspired by her mother's struggle with Alzheimer's disease, she works hard to stem the pain for other families.
You've walked down that road and other people need that help, and to walk down the road together.
Sandy's mother died a year ago in Yorkshire, after 11 years of heartbreaking decline.
And when I went home one year, I did notice that there was a little bit of a difference. My mother was a beautiful knitter. She did all these wonderful Aran patterns, and she'd have the knitting needles going, and she could read a book and talk at the same time. And all of a sudden I noticed that she wasn't knitting any longer. And so I asked her the reason, and she said it was her eyes. She was having a problem with her eyes and she couldn't see. I let it go at that time, but being home, I was looking in the cupboards and cleaning up the drawers, and I noticed a lot of knitting that had been partly done, and all of a sudden that patterns. There was huge mistakes, stitches were dropped, and so I knew then that there was something other than her eyes, that there was a problem.
Sandy attributes her love of sports and the outdoors to her mother, who was a national athlete in her youth. Once a vivacious woman and active member of the community, when Alzheimer's set in, Iris Riley became introverted and gradually closed herself off from those who loved her.
The terrible confusion of wondering what's happening, and also that fear of that, do they have this disease, and the denial that surrounds it. And that certainly was with my mum, because my dad could not get her to go to see the doctor. So she was slowly withdrawing. She just didn't want people to know what was happening. Even though Mum and Dad had such a great marriage, she wasn't really even talking to Dad about it.
Iris's charities and volunteer work had come to an end, and her only outings were restricted to long walks with her husband Ewart and her daughter Sandy. But even those peaceful moments became more complex as the disease ran its course.
I think Dad and I both had to work through that all of a sudden, Mum, it wasn't Mum, that we couldn't be upset or hurt by some of her actions. She would all of a sudden strike out, and I always remember trying to put mitts on her hands to take her out when it was quite cool. All of a sudden she hated having mittens or gloves put on her hands, and got to be very careful or else I'd feel a swipe across my face. And of course that wasn't my mum, and we understood and we realized that.
Iris and Ewart met after the Second World War, were married within the week, and spent many happy years together. They planned for Ewart's retirement, looking forward to spending even more time together. Unfortunately, it would be fighting a battle neither of them would ultimately win.
It's definitely a long goodbye. Life is not easy for a lot of people, and we all face our challenges. So he's certainly meeting the challenges, but he is an extremely lonely man now.
The mountain is on the equator. It's just over 19,000 feet high. It's a dormant volcano. It's a glaciated summit. So the first Europeans to see it said there was snow on the equator, and no one believed it at the time.
This is Jim Haberl's second year as the team guide, and a more qualified and inspired leader would be hard to find. The author of 2 books, climber, adventurer, and motivational speaker, he has galvanized many to fulfill their dreams, and will do the same for the Alzheimer Society's team. As experienced guides, Jim and his wife, Sue Oakey, know all too well the physical and mental determination this group will need if they plan to succeed.
What sort of pace do we go up the mountain, you know?
Slow.
Yeah. Just constantly slow. Start fast and slowing as slow as we go, eh?
It's pole, as the Africans like to say. Pole. It just means go slowly. Mm-hmm. So the pacing will be left up to us. So we'll watch you guys very carefully, and it'll be slower than you can even imagine right now.
The plan is to summit slowly, following the longer and less traveled Nalamaro route. This will allow the team to acclimatize as much as possible and increase their chances of reaching the peak.
Most people summit on their 3rd or 4th day. So we're going to summit on our 6th day. So that gives us more time to adapt to the altitude.
The agenda takes shape, and anticipation mounts as group members see their dreams start to become reality, only to have those high hopes shatter a few days later. On April 29th, Jim Haberl is tragically killed in an avalanche in Alaska, a devastating blow to the Alzheimer team, as well as the huge international mountaineering community in which Jim Haberl is well known, respected, and loved. For the second year, Africa prepares to welcome a team of Canadians battling Alzheimer's disease. They will scale the famed Kilimanjaro and renew a relationship forged by determination. Sadly, they will have to do it without their leader, Jim Haberl.
Last year, my husband and I did the same climb, or we did Kilimanjaro with the Alzheimer Society, a different group. We had planned to do it again this year, and everything was in place, and Jim was killed in an avalanche. And so for me, I only had a few things that I felt were important to do. when I was pretty raw and grieving, and it always felt to me like Kilimanjaro should go on. And I felt like Jim would want that. And for me, I thought it would be a bit of a coming home. Jim and I spent a lot of time here.
As familiar as Sue Oki is with Africa, she does not plan to guide this team alone.
Hi, how are you? Good, nice to meet you.
Just want to, I think, to say welcome back to Sue, and just how we all really appreciate you being here, Sue, and what an effort, and we are really grateful to have you along, and also to welcome Matt.
The team's second guide will be Matt McEachran, an experienced climber and one of Jim and Sue's closest friends.
Well, I've never been climbing before, but...
But I think that can help. Just guessing.
Yeah, I guess started climbing when I was about 18 or 19. First and foremost, I wanted to be there for her. Secondly, I wanted to carry on a legacy that Jim had been involved in. And thirdly, I know for my mom, her father died with Alzheimer's, and that was my grandpa. And in essence, when I was young, from 0 to 9, he was my dad. And I loved him, and my mom just cherished him.
Why don't we start right in with our climb schedule?
So they begin what would become a very emotional trip for all.
The letter that Ian sent me after your May meeting was full of support, and I really appreciate that. And I think it's going to be a great, great experience, a great climb. And there was something actually that Ian said in here that I just thought was so fitting for Kilimanjaro. There's no way we can replicate that amazing journey last year, but I do think we can, in the spirit of Jim, try to share the experience of a team working against significant odds for something greater than each one of us.
So do you guys want to have a quick look at where we're going?
The climbers range from ages 19 to 57 and are all in good shape. But the guide's main concern is to get them ready for the altitude.
So we're at about 50 meters here, and we're going to go to about 1,030.
It seems one of the best things to prepare for altitude is endurance training. So what you try to do is you exercise at sort of maybe 65% of your maximum heart rate, and what that does is it trains your body to burn fat instead of carbohydrates. And that way your body is much more efficient when you're climbing the mountain because you have much more fat in your body than carbohydrates.
This group is very motivated, and that might prove to be a problem.
Someone who's very fit could get on the mountain and try to roar up there very quickly and overexert themselves. And it doesn't matter how fit you are, if you overexert yourself at altitude, most likely you'll get symptoms.
Local hikes like Deeks Lake and the Lions give the hikers the distance training they need. But nothing close by can compare to the 19,340 feet, or almost 6,000 meters of altitude they will face at Kilimanjaro.
There isn't enough pressure for the oxygen to exchange in your body. So you have a lack of oxygen is what it is. As your body is adjusting, this lack of oxygen can give you symptoms like headaches. You can also feel nauseous, maybe a bit dizzy. Something that can happen during the night is you get something called sort of periodic breathing, where you breathe quite rapidly and then you stop breathing for up to a minute. And they say that if you're doing that, you're acclimatizing well because your respiratory rate is adjusting to how much oxygen you need in. Then it can become more severe. You can get something called high altitude pulmonary edema, which is when you get fluid in your lungs, and high altitude cerebral edema, which is swelling of the brain. And for all these symptoms, the best remedy is to go down.
If the climber descends immediately, the disorientation and vomiting stops right away, and they usually recover completely in 2 to 3 days. But if ignored, altitude sickness can be fatal.
The reason why Kilimanjaro is such an adventure for these people, such a journey, is because there is a bit of unknown. If it was totally guaranteed and we were saying, yep, everybody's going to get to the top, no altitude sickness, it's going to be a breeze, well, you know, it wouldn't be the same trip, wouldn't be the same adventure, wouldn't be the same journey, and you wouldn't have the same metaphor to Alzheimer's.
Jeff, are you carrying this?
Gord said, so what do you think? I said, what do I think of what? He said, of doing the climb this year. And I said, you got to be crazy. And I said, well, I don't think I would like to do it. And he said, well, I'm going to ask the boys. And I said, well, if you're going to ask the boys, I'm coming. You're not going to leave me behind.
On August 22nd, the 10 novice climbers gather to catch the flight, taking them to what they hope will be one of the greatest adventures they've experienced.
Hi guys, we're here with Vanna.
When we went to the airport, I think everything became pretty clear that we were going to bond. We had a common goal, a couple of common goals.
Representing the Alzheimer group in Africa will be Gordon Campbell, a local politician, his wife Nancy, and sons Jeffrey and Nicholas, Ian and Lisbeth Mackay, a husband and wife team, and Dawn Stevens, all adventure seekers who are especially drawn to the Alzheimer cause. Peggy Hunt is hoping to scatter some of her father's ashes at the peak. Tamara Poirier, the team's videographer, is dedicating her effort to a friend suffering from Alzheimer's disease. And Sandy Riley knows her triumph will be a tribute to her mother and father's struggle.
We all gave it some serious thought. We all had our own reasons for doing it, and we all were there for one another.
Friends, family, and members of the Alzheimer Society turn out to wish them well. Meanwhile, others who cannot be there in person also express their appreciation.
I think it's wonderful. Imagine. One thing it does is I think it brings Alzheimer's to people's attention once more. It raises money. I don't believe that we're funded by the government at all, so it's all by donation. I'm really thankful.
Norma Selby is one of the people trying to cope with the cost of having this disease. And since she is still in the early stages of Alzheimer's, the money raised by the climb could benefit her directly in the form of research. As a teacher, Norma once prided herself on her excellent memory. Now she is forced to take copious notes throughout the day, just to get by.
3 or 4 years ago, I never thought about thinking. It's just something you do, you don't think about. And now I have choices to make that I never thought about before.
So what they're doing now is they're getting all the loads of our gear and the food, tents, etc., and they sort of weigh them out and try to make it even for every porter load. And porter loads, I bet, are on average 40 to 50 pounds.
May I just introduce the guides and porters?
Yes.
And then we can pack. You've got a total crew of 36. Your chief guide is Frederick.
The hikers will carry only the bare essentials in their packs. The porters will carry the rest. All local men with altitude experience. They will keep an eye on the team and bring members back down if severe altitude sickness strikes.
I would also like you to identify the bag that has your name on it and introduce yourself to that porter, because he will be your personal porter for the whole safari.
John.
I think so it take around 7 hours or 6 hours. Yes, too slowly, no problem.
So what do you think? Should we start earlier for acclimatization's sake rather than later?
At first camp, with the mountain looming before them, the team members refuse to be daunted by everything they must achieve.
Very nice little bit on Alzheimer's, which is good.
Oh, great.
Oh, you just did a live interview?
Yeah.
Oh, great.
Along with money, the climbers are raising awareness. Few things are known about Alzheimer's disease, and we have no way of preventing it. The older a person gets, the more vulnerable they become. Or, like Norma Selby, some may inherit a genetic predisposition.
And I didn't really catch on until my mother came down with it. And that's when I realized, yes, of course, her brother and sister and cousin did too. Why don't you sit here, dear?
Norma noticed disturbing gaps in her memory about 5 to 6 years ago, when she was in her early 50s. A couple of years later, she was forced to admit her condition was affecting her job performance.
And at that time, I approached my principal and said that I would have to retire that year. And it was too bad because I loved teaching.
Memory loss is the first sign of the disease, followed by larger gaps in brain function. Alzheimer's can literally erode a healthy brain until a person is helpless in caring for themselves or recognizing others.
I will say the wrong word. I took my glasses off one day and I must have sat them on the table, and later I came to the table and I asked my husband if he would pass me my shoes. And we both had a laugh because it was quite obvious that I meant my glasses.
Even though her malfunctions are minor, Norma has lost her confidence for even simple tasks. While cooking, she once forgot how to melt butter. Another time, she neglected to shell the boiled egg for an egg salad sandwich. On another occasion, she didn't realize that she couldn't operate the microwave without closing the oven's door.
I'm touchy if I think somebody's laughing at me. If my husband had come out and said, "What is wrong? You know better than to leave the microwave door open," I'd have been devastated.
At the same time, she says a sense of humor is one of her greatest weapons.
Right now I'm reading a book. There again, it's a good book. I'm on about page 170, but you know, 4 or 5 sentences sound strangely familiar. And that makes me think perhaps all I need is 12 really good books. By the time I get through the 12th one, I can start them all over again.
Scientists are not close to a cure, but they feel they are very close to halting the disease in its tracks. That is something Norma Selby hopes to benefit from in her lifetime. But after losing her mother to Alzheimer's a few months ago, she does not ignore what could potentially happen to her.
So here we are, we're at about 11,200 feet, which is higher than Baker. And this morning we came from about 8,400. And our total elevation gain today will be about 3,400 feet, which is substantial. Or pole.
Pole is good.
Pole is good, but maybe stopped is not so good. So what we're doing to allow our bodies to acclimatize, as you can probably see, is we're going at a very slow pace, just meandering up the mountain, being really careful to keep breathing and not overexerting ourselves. For the most part, people are carrying on conversations and just enjoying it, having a good time.
As the climber's breathing becomes more labored, the guides help them monitor and pace themselves.
We're not breathing off the carbon dioxide.
Yeah.
And it's natural because, again, the air pressure is less, so it doesn't rush in as easily.
I see a mountain. We're going to the top. In 20 minutes, a half an hour. We're all gonna stop. Pule, pule. Pule, pule.
So when we get into camp today, we'll be at 11,800 feet. People might feel headachy, lethargic, maybe a bit nauseous. And we're going to encourage them just to keep moving slowly, just doing chores around the camp. And again tonight, we'll have as many, eat as many carbos as we can.
It's good.
We're gonna hold her to that. Wouldn't that be great?
Well, another stunning morning at 11,800 feet on the flanks of Mount Kilimanjaro. You can see Tebow high up in the distance there. This is the reward for the hard work of getting here after 3 days. This is our second day up on the mountain proper. Today we'll go from about 11,800 here up to 14,200.
Every morning as the sun rose and we're climbing out with ice all over the tent, bitterly cold.
Oh, tingly fingers.
Oh yes, very tingly fingers.
Oh.
We'd have one little bowl of hot water, communal hot water that we'd all share.
Tomorrow, I plan to wash my left hand, thank you. My left hand.
We're still in our tent. We've a little slower than everybody else, but we don't mind because we've foregone hot water and soap.
We are going higher though.
Yeah, so it'll be cooler.
I think it's a little bit misleading when you talk about climbing a mountain in Africa because you think of Africa as hot. Whereas this is a mountain and it can be real mountain weather, and especially at that altitude. So you have to be ready for snow and you have to be ready for hot weather.
I won't do any big scoots.
I'm just going to leave those on underneath.
Coffee out here.
Oh, okay. Walking you'll probably be fine, like, especially if it's sunny out. It could...
We had a lot of wind, we had some rain, a lot of what they call dripping fog. So sometimes during the day we'd get patches of open sky, but when we set up the tents at night, very often it was cold, it was cloudy, it was damp. Naturally, because of the mountain, a lot of time the tents were on a slope, so you'd wake up in the middle of the night sort of scrunched up at the door of your tent and have to try and hopscotch back up to the top.
Today we're going to 14,200, substantially higher than here. So we're going up 2,400 feet. As it gets steeper, we'll adjust and we'll see how people are doing. Don't feel any pressure. If you're starting to feel, you're getting out of breath, make sure you stop, allow yourself to recover.
Take it down to the lake.
Take it down to the tarn.
We're planning to do a short day. We don't want to tire ourselves out, but we'd like to gain as much altitude as we can, ideally about 1,000 feet.
The Alzheimer team is now at over 14,000 feet and feeling the effects of altitude as their bodies adjust.
Just a little nausea in the night, and I'll let you know better when I stand up this morning. But other than that, pretty good. We have done really well so far, but I think we're all kind of wondering what's going to happen as we go a little bit higher.
The team is now struggling with advancing symptoms of altitude, but no one is incapacitated enough to turn back.
We came across a piece of land called the Saddle, which was between Kibo Hut and Gilliman's. And the wind was blowing. It was cold. Everybody was pulling their hoods down and putting sunglasses on or anything that would break the wind. Hair was freezing.
It seemed never ending, and of course we're walking extremely slowly because of the altitude, and there's low cloud and mist rolling across the saddle. And it was also a parallel on people who have Alzheimer's disease and just how we seem to fade into the mist and come back out again. And certainly in some stages of Alzheimer's disease, that's exactly what happens, that the memory's there, the memory disappears.
Through the relentless desert, the climbers feel isolated. And yet here, in one of the most deserted recesses of the world, they feel an inexplicable link with people they will never meet. The millions who stay hidden because of the stigma that chases them. Team members spend these remote moments considering the desperation Alzheimer's disease brings and forging a bond with those who need their help.
I can't imagine, actually, what people must truly go through in the later stages if what we just experienced is parallel in so many ways for the climb and the ascent and the struggle.
what it brought home to me was that with my dad being a caregiver for my mother who had Alzheimer's disease for 11 years, I always knew that he had a lot of strength. But just climbing that mountain and being with him and thinking about him, I just realized how much strength and courage caregivers of Alzheimer patients need just day after day. And they don't have that incentive that there's a summit, that there's going to be a view when they get to the top of the mountain.
The caregivers are the ones who manage alone. Often, they have to juggle their job and the care of a loved one while performing double duty at home.
And I really have to take over everything in the house, all the decisions.
Tom Stringer was diagnosed a few years ago when his wife noticed he showed uncharacteristic apathy for daily things. Since then, Doreen has overseen every aspect of Tom's battle with Alzheimer's, which has turned into a full-time job. She makes the appointments, does the driving, and makes all the major decisions along with Tom's physicians.
Tom can still carry out all his hygiene and shower and things like that. And he's also on an antidepressant, which and I think it keeps his mood up because at one point he was very abrasive.
Yeah, Duffy, Duffy, Duffy. Come on, Duffy, Duffy.
Personality changes are common with advancing Alzheimer's. The person becomes less social as he is gradually debilitated. But Doreen makes sure Tom has a routine that allows him to socialize comfortably.
Take Duffy a walk. Or rather, he takes me a walk. That's about it. That's about it. Oh, and I go to the deli and have a coffee and a sandwich. Yeah.
Basically, I feel somewhat of a loss of companionship because Tom is not a happy camper with going out to a movie or going to a show. I've actually got tickets and at the last minute he wouldn't come along, so.
Well, I'm a homebody. I like to stay at home.
Happy Valentine's Day, Doreen Stringer.
My father has Alzheimer's disease, and it makes it very hard for him to express himself.
Tom's daughter read a Valentine last year on a local newscast as an ode to her parents' time together. Caregivers like her mother experience a constant grieving for these precious moments that are now lost to them. Doreen avoids depression by going out with her friends into exercise classes. She struggles to stay healthy because she knows what researchers are just realizing. The best place for someone to endure Alzheimer's is at home with his family.
I really don't mind looking after Tom because we've been married 45 years and he's a lovely man.
We've got to know each other.
We've got to know each other. So I don't mind taking care of him. I really don't. I don't find it a hardship at all.
After 45 years of marriage, I love you as if it were the moment we took our vows.
The hikers reach Kibo Hut at 15,400 feet, carrying with them the spirit of those who could not make the trip, except in their own hearts and minds.
Get some warm clothes on right away. Good job, you guys.
You mean something we don't already have?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay. So you guys, we're here at Kibo Hut, 15,100 feet. And this is the jump-off point to our summit bed. Tonight. And we leave at midnight. So this is sort of what we've been preparing for months and months and months and working hard towards. You guys in particular working very, very hard toward this. And so it's kind of exciting. I'm excited anyway.
There was not really any rest in that as we got to Kibo Hut, people had to get themselves prepared for the day, and their body wasn't really even acclimatized to 15.4, knowing that at midnight we were going to have to all wake up and have a quick cup of tea and then head out. So I knew we were all in for marathon day.
To the top!
To the top! To the top! To the top!
And back! And back!
And back!
It is extremely chilly. They're saying that it could go to as low as -25 tonight as we're climbing. So we're all going to look like stuffed potatoes because I think we've got every bit of clothing that we possess on us right now. We've been told that we've got to go for dinner and try and eat something. It's getting increasingly difficult to eat at this altitude, but we all have to do our best because I think from now until the summit and until we come back down again, we're not going to feel like eating too much.
I went to bed, I think, at around 6:30 or 7 o'clock, and we were supposed to be waking up at 11:30, and I remember lying in my sleeping bag and not being able to sleep and feeling my own pulse racing.
Well, I guess we're ready for off. It's finally here. It's time to put our boots on and get up that mountain. And the whole team is ready to go.
Here, stand still for a second, Nick. 1, 2.
It's gonna be gorgeous up there.
Tilt your headlamp down if you haven't already, and it'll point closer to the ground for you.
And that's something that I feel about Africa is it's a huge country and it's a quiet country. We don't have the roar of traffic, we don't have planes. There's just nothing except hearing your own heartbeat and hearing your rasping breath.
The distance they must cover now is vertical.
Sunrise over
Just
Africa.
need to catch your breath a little bit. It's a breathtaking view, though.
It was just tougher than anything I could have imagined, and something that will sort of stay in my mind, I'm sure, for the rest of my days. All of us walking up there in a pile, in the moonlight, in the dark, in the freezing cold. You kept looking as we had walked for, 4 hours or 5 hours, and you could see the top, and half an hour later, the top is still no closer.
One of my favorite memories is, I guess it was about 5:30 or 6 in the morning, and we were probably at about almost 18,000 feet, and the sun broke on the horizon and just lit up this sea of clouds down below us, and all the colors of the clothing that the people were wearing and the orange rock and really started to light up, and I think it lifted everyone's morale for a moment there.
On the way up, I felt incredible nausea, and I was feeling really badly. And then I got to Gilman's Point right before the summit, and I felt exhilarated. And all of those negative feelings that I was feeling just went away.
Screen, sunglasses, grab a drink. Oh, look at that. Oh my God.
That is incredible. It was like a new day with the sun coming up. You could actually see the curvature of the earth when the sun came up. I've never seen that before.
Incredible vista.
Reaching Gilliman's, the whole team on getting there was a very emotional time. We couldn't breathe. Some of us had the experience of leaving our lunch on the ground, but there were hugs all the way around. There were tears all the way around.
The team has made it to Gilman's Point intact, but not everyone is going to attempt the last leg of the climb.
Remembering my name on Gilman's Point was, it was a struggle because there was so much else occurring in my body that it took moments to focus, to do virtually anything. I felt totally spent. I became violently ill. My head was pounding, and it was an effort just to stand. So, without doubt, I can tell you that those feelings, very, very troubling, very, very confusing. And having had an uncle pass away very recently who was a victim of Alzheimer's, and two grandparents who suffered from a form of dementia, I can relate firsthand, or rather secondhand, from very close relationships, that Alzheimer's is a terribly debilitating disease. And when I reached Gilman's Point, I was debilitated. I couldn't make the decision to go on or not. So someone had to make it for me, and I'm very happy that they did.
Gilman's Point used to be Kilimanjaro's summit, until it was discovered Uhuru is 800 feet higher. It's a short distance, but the zigzag route the group must take will make it a grueling 2-hour trip. Now on their final ascent, with their feet dragging and their heads spinning, the hikers fight to keep their equilibrium. They battle the desire to stop every second of the way.
It was a slug. I'm talking, I was really tired. But I wanted to get there, and I remember there's a little sort of a hillock with a rock on the top of it that I thought might be the summit as we were walking by, and Frederick, who was our guide, walked, and I thought, Frederick, you're supposed to stop there. That's the summit. And he just kept on going by, and I thought, no, can't be that much further.
We all truly had turned into zombies. When I look back onto the other people, we were all just concentrating on the step ahead of us and hoping that the next, as Gord said, the next marker would be the peak. But when I arrived at the peak, I was simply exhausted by this point. When I reached the peak, I burst into tears. I absolutely bawled. I looked around at the vista and the glaciers, and it was just so incredibly beautiful. And I was so emotionally drained.
She's reliving it.
I can relive it right now. Oh my God.
When they reach the top, the disorientation is overcome by the euphoria. It took days, even months, to get to Uhuru, but they can only stay here for mere minutes before the altitude overwhelms them. Still, they will not savor their victory alone. Sandy Riley struggles to speak with Global News Vancouver from the peak.
We were all quite nauseated, and quite a lot of us had headaches as well. It's a pretty awesome mountain, and I now, having seen it and having done it, I can certainly understand why only 1 in 10 people ever reach the summit.
The team's effort raises $130,000 that the Alzheimer Society will distribute throughout the province for patients, research, and education. The climbers are exhausted, but it is with an enormous sense of accomplishment that they descend the mountain.
They came together as a team. They did it in the best possible style, which for me is they were kind to each other, they were thoughtful with each other, they worked as a team to accomplish this goal, and it was for something greater than the individual, I think. I think that's a wonderful feeling, that people still will commit to doing those sorts of things in life, not just attaining an individual goal, but a collective goal, something that is good for society.
Dr. Sheila Devane and Emmanuel.
The day after their climb, the team is met by Dr. Sheila Devane, who accepts $5,000 of the sponsorship money. The sister works with Alzheimer's sufferers in Africa and says it will be put to good use.
We do lots of education and awareness raising and networking. So we talk to people like you. We try and make friends nationally and internationally, so that we have links outside.
I think we all learn something about ourselves. Personally, I think we've all got challenges. We've all got personal challenges, whether they're health or they're challenges through choices that we've made in life, challenges of things that have been put upon us that we don't necessarily have control over.
Jambo, jambo bwana, habari gani?
To this land of extremes, they chose to bring their journey of courage. Sue Oki, who at every turn confronted bittersweet memories of her late husband, Jim. Matt McEachran, who was there for his friend Sue while dealing with his own grief, and who took the team onto Uhuru when Sue finally admitted emotional exhaustion at Gilman's Point. Sandy Riley, who honors her mother's memory with her extraordinary commitment to the Alzheimer Society. The Campbell family, who demonstrated how the tight bond within a family can carry the members through the toughest times. Ian and Lisbeth Mackay and Don Stevens, who after a valiant effort to get to Gilman's Point, encouraged the rest of the team to go on without them. Peggy Hunt, who was determined to leave her father's ashes atop the highest peak of his beloved Africa. And Tamara Poirier, who made the whole trip to Uhuru laden with camera equipment because of her determination to document the trip for Alzheimer's.
Look at that top one. Just look at that. I'm not prepared just to slip into oblivion without knowing what's going on. I'm having quite a good day, and then I can make mistakes even on a good day. It's grand, just grand. I just think that perhaps what these people are doing to do with their Kilimanjaro climb is bring it before us one more time, and so we can take the steps that are needed. If you feel yourself slipping, don't just slip and think there's no answer.
Yeah. See where that hanging bird thing is over there? Can you reach that there?
Oh, I don't know.
I think of, too, another saying about courage, that courage doesn't always come with a loud roar. It's often that little voice at the end of the day that says, tomorrow I will try again. And I think that climbing Kilimanjaro was like that. Every day you had to get up and you had to try again and venture into the unknown. And I really hope that they all continue to choose to climb these mountains in life, whether it's metaphorically or literally speaking, because I think that's what life is all about.
Jambo bwana, habari gani? Mzuri sana. Wageni mwakaribishwa. Tanzania hakuna matata. Tanzania nchi nzuri, hakuna matata. Nchi ya kupendeza, hakuna matata. Nchi yenye amani, hakuna matata. Tanzania nchi nzuri, hakuna matata. Nchi ya kupendeza, hakuna matata. Nchi yenye amani, hakuna matata.